They feel it, and it's something deep, something visceral, something that can't be explained, only experienced. Love, that mystery that appears in such a powerful, unexpected way, hits one at the core, but they are at war with themselves because even after realizing everything, they don't know how to deal with the truth that consumes them. It's a struggle between the passion they feel and the insecurity they carry, the vulnerability of someone who believes they are not enough for you, not enough for the world they believe you are a part of. They always hide in the shadows of their own mind, because they know there is a difference they can't ignore, the distance, an invisible but real line. The distance between the worlds you both live in, and it's hard for them to understand how you could, even for a moment, want to approach this abyss. They try, but their mind insists on working against them. Fear grows. Doubt settles in. They look at their empty hands and feel the weight of silence. How could someone like them really be by your side? How could someone with so little occupy such a large space in the life of someone like you who, even if you don't show it, lives at a different level? They feel like a fraud, a lie that you would eventually uncover. They try to rationalize, they try to understand, but the idea that their possessions or lack thereof could define their worth in your eyes consumes them. How could they be enough for you? How could they stand by your side without feeling inferior? They sense that the richness of their soul may amount to something, but is it enough? The fantasy that their love for you transcends all others is swallowed by the feeling that the gap between who they are and who you are grows wider and wider. You don't see what he sees, and that's a problem. You might not realize it, but he feels it. Every detail you overlook turns into a storm inside him. He observes himself and feels imperfect, flawed, in a scenario where perfection seems to be the key to being worthy of your love. He sees himself as someone too small to occupy a space beside you, and that weighs heavily on him more than words could describe. He feels that there's something you don't notice, a barrier that you can't see, that invisible line which he fears is greater than any words he could say, and that's why he avoids you. That's why he hesitates, closes himself off, distorts, in a game of denial that only makes him suffer. Because if he continues to expose himself, you might notice what he's afraid you'll see, that he is not like you, that he doesn't belong in your world. You have everything he's never had, and deep down, more than anything, he wants to feel worthy of it. He wants to step into your universe, but he feels like he's trying to fit a puzzle piece into a place where it could never belong. He sees himself as someone who, no matter how hard he tries, will never be enough to carve out his space. He looks in the mirror, and even though he sees a smiling face that falls in love, it feels like a cruel joke, as if he could never have something he couldn't even dream of. He wonders, do you really see what he has inside? Could you look beyond his flaws, beyond his limitations, and truly recognize his worth? He tries to believe, but the truth is that what he feels isn't enough to erase the fear that at some point you will realize he has nothing to offer, the fear that over time the gap between what he has and what you have will become unbearable, the fear that in the end you'll see that he is just a shadow. He wanted to tell you, he wanted to let you know, but it's so difficult. The words get stuck, his throat tightens and his heart races. How could he ask you to accept someone like him, when with every step, with every glance, he feels that his own insecurities are greater than any love he could offer? He feels ashamed of himself, of his limitations, of his past and his position, and that pushes him away more than he would like, because he loves you, but he sees himself as a fraud, like someone who, in the end, doesn't belong in your world. And so, he starts to pull away, he starts to protect himself, he begins to create invisible barriers. He starts saying things that aren't true, distancing himself in ways you can't understand, because for him, it's just easier this way. It's easier to lie to himself and leave you in peace. It's easier to withdraw than to show you the flaws he carries. The pain of not being enough turns into the pain of never having tried, and he shuts himself off, trapped in his own fear, in his own solitude. And when he wonders what he could do, what he should do, he realizes the answer isn't simple, because what he wants most is to be worthy of your love, but what he fears most is being rejected. The financial situation, what he has or doesn't have, he knows is just a reflection of how he feels inside. He senses that for you, it might be insignificant, but for him, it's everything. He judges himself harshly for every misstep, every mistake, and every insecurity that builds up inside him. If you only knew If you knew how much he feels, how much he hurts for not being able to be who he believes you need, perhaps you would understand the internal battle he faces every day. But he doesn't want you to see. He doesn't want you to know what he truly feels, because he fears that by recognizing his insecurities, you will see him differently. He fears that the light that shines between you, the love that still exists, will fade away. He fears that at some point you will realize the truth he still cannot accept, that no matter how much he loves you, he doesn't believe he is worthy of you. But what he doesn't realize, and perhaps never will, is that what he carries within himself is what truly matters. Not material things, not social differences, not the stigmas he has placed upon himself. What he doesn't see is that you have never seen him that way. You've never seen him as he sees himself. And deep down, what he really needs to understand is that the love he feels for you doesn't need to be validated by anything other than who he is. He just needs to realize that, in essence, true love has no barriers, no limits. Will he be able to realize this? Will he finally surrender to what his heart screams? Will fear and insecurities leave him in peace, allowing him to have what he deserves? He feels the pain. It isn't simple. It drags with every step, with every glance. Every time his eyes meet yours, he feels discomfort. Something inside him breaks, as if he cannot bear what he believes is the weight of the difference. He looks at you and sees beauty, lightness, power. He sees the glow you carry, the reflection of a life he perhaps has never experienced, and that consumes him. What he can't realize is that when he looks at you, he is seeing himself through the mirror of his own limitations. He doesn't understand that his insecurity, what he feels as a chasm, is just a reflection of what he believes he is. He doesn't comprehend that you don't see him the way he sees himself, imperfect, flawed, distant. To you, he is just someone who, for some reason, has something that draws you to him in a way he still can't grasp. Something so simple, yet so complex. But he doesn't see it. He feels that his shortcomings are greater than any love that could blossom between you. He gets lost in this fear, in the idea that in the end, the social differences that torment him will push him away from you. He can't see that often. It's the simplest, most genuine feelings that truly shape a connection. It's not about the clothes, the possessions, or the status he might hold. It's about the glances, the words spoken in silence, the gestures of affection. He forgets this. And by forgetting, he builds a wall, a barrier between you that you may not always see but is very real to him. He still tries to hide. He still attempts to justify his absence, the emotional distance, the coldness with which he sometimes responds. He still tries because deep down he wants something different. He wants to feel accepted, to realize that despite the differences, he can still be the one you choose. But the fear is larger than he is. Fear governs his decisions and actions, and at some point, he will realize that this fear, this insecurity, may be the only real obstacle between what could be and what already is. His love for you is already real, but will he recognize that what's lacking isn't your acceptance, but rather his own acceptance? He doesn't see it yet, but maybe, just maybe, as time passes and he allows himself a gentler look at himself, he will realize that the real change he needs doesn't come from you but from within himself. He needs to stop measuring himself. He needs to stop believing that the only thing that matters is the differences. And he will understand once and for all that love is not about being perfect, nor about fitting into a mold that society imposes. Love is about being who you are, and still being loved for it. Love is about allowing yourself to be. It's difficult for him, very difficult. But he still has time to discover himself, to see the beauty in his journey, to recognize what truly matters. And when he understands that the flaws, insecurities, and differences are just parts of the journey, he will finally be able to take the next step, the step that will bring him closer to you, and perhaps closer to himself. He's always had this fear of not being enough. But he doesn't know, he doesn't understand, that enough was never what he thought it was. Enough is being who he really is, with all that it represents. And he will only understand this when he looks at himself with the same compassion he looks at you, when he realizes he doesn't need to be anything more than just being. And that you already see this in him, but he still doesn't see it in himself. The real challenge lies there. He needs to learn to see himself as you already see him. This is the key. He hasn't realized it yet, but you are there, seeing him with eyes of love. He just needs to recognize this. He just needs to allow the insecurity to dissolve into the truth that perhaps love is truly about the acceptance of who we are, without needing to be anything beyond that. What he doesn't know is that by distancing himself, he is pulling away from himself. In hiding from you, he is hiding from his own truth, the truth that to be loved, he only needs to be real. And that's the first step to breaking down the barriers he's built for himself, but he is still not ready to see that. He still carries the weight of the difference of what he believes to be an invisible line between what he has and what you have. And as long as he doesn't realize that the distance is an illusion, he will continue to lose himself in this cycle of fear and insecurity. But when he does realize, when he understands that there's nothing wrong with being who he is, when he sees that what you desire most is his truth, then he will be able to take the most important step of all, the step to become whole, to be loved exactly as he is. Will he be able to see this before fear pushes him away from everything he truly wants? Will he allow himself to realize that the only thing he needs to change is the way he sees himself? Will he find the courage to take that step, to look beyond the difference and see the connection that already exists? He continues to struggle with the internal battle. Each day is a new test, a new step taken with caution, with hesitation. The fear that accompanies him is not fear of you, but of himself. He fears that by opening up, by showing who he truly is, you will see him differently. He fears that by exposing himself, you will realize that he does not fit into your life, that he does not belong in your world. The difference between the worlds, the invisible line that separates your two universes, still weighs heavily on his soul. He feels that the love you have for him is something he doesn't deserve, almost like a gift he cannot accept. He sees himself as someone destined to linger on the sidelines, someone who deep down has nothing to offer. His financial situation, his insecurities, his unfinished pasts, all of this makes him believe he cannot give you what you need. He wonders in silence if you would ever understand this. If you looked at him and saw everything he lacks, would you still see someone worthy of you? But what's most painful isn't the fear of your gaze. The most painful part is what he feels inside himself. He looks in the mirror and doesn't see someone worth it. He sees someone flawed, someone who will never have the courage to bridge the chasm between you two. And that's a corrosive thought. The emptiness he feels is greater than any word. He wants to fight against it, wishes to break free from this feeling, but the chains are strong. He feels trapped in his own perception of himself, and this prison prevents him from experiencing what could be something wonderful. He still distances himself, still closes off. Even when you get close, even when you reach out your hand, he withdraws, hesitates, pulls away. He doesn't know how to handle that closeness without feeling that something is wrong. He struggles to deal with the love you offer, while believing that he is unworthy of it, and this more than anything pushes him away from you. He wants to be with you, but he doesn't know if he can bear the pain of rejection he fears, the rejection he feels towards himself. But the truth he hasn't realized yet is that, while he gets lost in this fear, you just want to see him whole. You desire nothing more than his truth, his essence, who he really is. You have never looked at him through the lenses he sees himself with. To you, he is not just a sum of flaws or gaps to be filled. He is someone with so much to give, but he hasn't recognized that yet. He fears that when you finally discover what he thinks, what he feels, and what he truly believes about himself, you will reject him, and that is what holds him back. He is afraid that the love he feels for you isn't enough to overcome the barriers of shame, inadequacy, and fear that he has built over time. He hides behind an invisible shield, one that isn't real but feels real to him. He pulls away, but that's not what he wants. He just doesn't know how to be more than he feels. He still hasn't realized that what you desire most is not what he has or lacks, but who he is. He hasn't come to understand that the real obstacle between the two of you isn't the financial difference or the social distance, but rather the perception he has of himself. He continues to believe that you need to see something more, something he doesn't have, something he's never had, and as long as he doesn't change that viewpoint, he will keep distancing himself more and more from everything he could be. He could, if he wanted to, simply allow himself to be loved. He could, if he permitted himself, see that he doesn't need to be anything more than who he is to be the person you choose. But for that, he needs to change the way he sees himself, the way he faces his own limitations. He needs to realize that by pulling away, by hiding, he is only distancing himself from his own worth. And until he can see that, Fear will continue to prevent him from taking the next step. Will he ever realize that the love he desires is simpler than he imagines? Will he, when looking at himself with more compassion, understand that he doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to have everything to be worthy of what you offer? Will he at some point manage to set aside his insecurities and finally understand that what you want most is his truth? It's a constant struggle, an internal fight that prevents him from seeing the simplicity of what's in front of him. But maybe, one day, he'll allow himself to see what is obvious to you. His worth has never been in his possessions or social status, but in the truth of who he is. And when he realizes this, the love he fears will be the very thing that frees him. Will he recognize the truth before fear consumes him completely? Will he learn to be who he truly is without the fear of rejection? Only time will tell. If this touched your heart, I'll see you in the next video. Join me on this journey